Welcome back to the Center for Equus Coaching. Here we believe that partnering with horses can help transform the way we connect to ourselves, others, and the world around us. My name is Travis Stock, and I'm one of the instructors at the center. I've had the honor of teaching and getting to know many amazing people on their journey to becoming an Equus coach. And introducing the world to some of those people has become a true joy of mine. Today, I'm joined by Equus Coaching Master Facilitator, licensed trauma therapist, and Mustang enthusiast, Kit Maxwell. I'm excited for you all to hear the story of Sunna, a previously wild Mustang that Kit and I spent time with back in 2017. Sunna now lives with Kit and helped inspire her to create Zen Horse, a nonprofit and equine facility that creates safe, nourishing spaces for both Mustangs and humans as they journey through healing, relationship, and restoration. So let's hear more about it. Thanks for joining me, Kit.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. Now that I've set that up, everybody's going to be very interested in hearing about Sunna. So we will get to her, but I want to hear about you as a person and your journey first, and then we'll get to Sunna. Is that okay with you?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay. So I love to just hear people's sort of like origin stories of how they got to Equus coaching. How did you find out about the Center for Equus Coaching? Tell me about that journey for you.
Good question. Okay, so it was at a point in my life where I was ending a lifelong career as an educator and was really looking like, what is that next thing? And I really didn't know. And a colleague of mine said, "Why don't you Google life coaching?" And because we had been academic coaches, and I was like, "Life coach," But I think in hindsight, we'd worked with students that had disabilities, so I think
Mm.
she meant life skills coach, but that's not what she said.
Oh,
And I'm a
okay.
good doobie, so I went to the computer and I life coach, So I'm looking through, and I was like, "Oh, and I found Martha Beck.
Mm.
And I was like, "Who is this?" I had no idea. I'm reading her that, "She sounds amazing," yes, and she's like, "If this resonates with you, you should sign up." Why, yes, it does, right? So I signed up to be in her 2015 cohort, and I was so excited. And so it was in one of her blog posts that she mentioned Coel and Equus coaching, and I was like, "What?" Yeah.
That exists? It's real?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was like, "That's a thing?"
Uh-huh.
And I was born into the horse world, so that had been all about my childhood. We were a horse family, we raised horses, showed horses, did all the things, right? And I hadn't been doing that for a while. And I thought, "Oh my gosh." So I saw my whole life coming together in that moment, like the clouds parted, the sun shone through, the choir of angels popped up from behind, "Ah," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is what I wanna be when I grow up."
Mm,
So January of 2016, I thought to myself, "Oh, I should probably actually go try this thing. Like, it sounds amazing, but, like,
yeah.
what's it really like?" And it's difficult to understand when you try to read about it, right? Even now, I have a hard time explaining what it is. People around here, they're like, "It's amazing and life-changing." Like, "Great, could you say more?" "No." People just want me to come, right? So even that's really hard to get a sense of like, well, what is this thing? It sounds great. So my mom and I flew out to California. We scheduled a session with Coel, and Kasha was there. And I thought, I don't know at all what to expect from this experience, but it doesn't matter because I'm familiar with horses, totally good with horses, so it'll be fine. So there was the round pen, and Coel and Kasha were sitting up top the way it used to be back there. And they had one of the Rocky Mountain horses in there, and I walked in, you know, and the horse walked over, and I was like, "Hey, buddy," rubbed his little face, and he looked at me, and he was like, and he stepped in, and I was like, "Dude, boundaries." I know, he said boundaries, and he looked at me, and he was like, and he pinned his ears back, and he opened his mouth, and he came at me. I
Whoa.
know, right? I had met hundreds of horses, and I've never made this kind of first impression. So I looked at Coel, and I'm like, "Is this horse gonna bite me?" And she goes, "Yeah, it's pretty much gonna
Mhm.
escalate to that."
Yeah, horses do that sometimes.
And I'm like, "What?" So, like, in the first 2 seconds, right, this horse clocks the pattern, one of my many patterns, but clocks the pattern. And so Coel says, "Well, let me ask you a question. She said, when you enter a new situation that you're unfamiliar with, do you hang back? And do you kind of check everything out before you offer anything of yourself? I'm like, 100%, that's me. And she goes, well, that's what you did. She goes, you walked in and immediately energetically disappeared. And she said, when you do that, the horse is going to do one of two things. It's either going to walk away because no one's home, or it's going to provoke you. Like, what are you doing? What are you hiding? What do you? And she said, he just chose to provoke you. So she said, the question is, what would happen if you were your authentic self every day? And without hesitation, I replied, there would be chaos. I said, you don't know what all's up in her.
Uh-huh.
Just like that. And she said, maybe if you were your authentic self every day and you didn't try to hold it back so hard, maybe there'd be peace.
Mm.
So thus began, that is the exact pinpoint moment when the hero's saga of my life began. And it was long and arduous and hard and necessary and messy and life-changingly wonderful. She basically brought to my eyes this thing that I was doing, obviously with humans, and she's like, "Look, you keep disappearing." And I was like, "Oh, I knew I did that, but I didn't know that other people could sense it." And I'm like, "This explains why I don't have work friends, because I don't speak in a peer-to-peer situation." And I'm like, "Okay, again." So, that's when and afterward too, she said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "I definitely wanna do this." And I'm like, "This is where my life is going."
I appreciate you sharing that story. It's such a really good synopsis of how Equus coaching and being in a relationship with a horse can point out to us what we're doing in our life that we're not even aware of. You said in the first 2 seconds the pattern was spotted. That's the kind of thing. This is why we all love hanging out with horses, is because we get a mirror held up to us about what's going on with us, what are our strategies for navigating the world, and it asks us to really think through, is that working for me?
Yeah.
And I love that the version of that story is you felt like if you actually showed up that chaos would happen. And yet that session gave you the chance to even just have an inkling. Doesn't mean you know how to do it yet, but just an inkling of, what if the opposite's true? What
Mhm,
if the chaos is because I'm holding all that back? What if not showing up authentically is the reason why I feel that it might be chaos, because I'm guarded against something?
mhm.
It's
Yes,
really
and then
powerful.
add another layer on the cake, as that we could have mic dropped there, right? And me driven
Hmm.
away.
Yeah, I'm right.
But there she's like, "Okay, so now let's go back in with a different horse and see if you can show up differently." Right? So then I go, "Oh, okay." So I go in, and this one, I still remember the horse's name. She was a cute little blue roan, and her name was Rosie. And,
I remember Rosie. Oh,
right? So, yeah, Rosie comes in, and I was in, and I'm like, "Hi!" And she was like, "Hi!" And so we started playing, and we were frolicking and dancing, and it was amazing. And what that all led to, again, too, to your point, was I got to see the difference between when I went in and did that thing that I did, what that felt like in my body when I was doing the thing. And then I got to feel when I went in with Rosie, how did that feel differently in my
mhm.
body? So I could feel the difference between open and seen and the difference between shields up.
And that's the difference between Equus coaching, which is experiential and relational learning. That's different from maybe like traditional talk therapy or just one-on-one coaching where you're doing it over Zoom or just you and the coach. You actually get to not only spot the pattern, but come up with ways that you might experiment with showing up differently and try it out in real time and get the feedback on how it goes. You actually really get to put it into action and see how that changes the external environment. And then we'll help you unpack how might that apply to humans also. But there's something about the nervous system getting to experiment and get feedback and experience around trying something new that is
Yeah.
really important to elevating our growth processes.
Mhm. Yeah. It's one of my favorite parts of being an Equus coach, right, is having that safe container to let them just experiment, and for me, when I went in, it happened right away that particular time.
Hmm.
Plenty of times it hasn't, so it's
Yeah.
nice also in that learning to, like, get places to try. "Okay, yeah, I'm showing up. Look at me showing up. Great. What feedback are we getting from the horse?" You know? People are always saying to me, "Your horses smoke." I'm like, "It's a metaphor."
Yeah. Well, you said something that really resonated with me, that as you were starting to learn about Equus coaching, it felt like the clouds parted. It felt like this is what I want to be when I grow up. And oftentimes, as soon as many of us identify what it is and who it is we want to be as we grow up, whether we're actually still growing up or whether we're grown ass adults, like we get to refine that over and over in our life. But oftentimes when we find a sense of purpose and a mission and something that we feel called to, it does set us on a path of that hero's journey where there is a dissolving of our old identities, where there is some chaos that comes up, there is struggle, there is challenge, there is hardship that comes after that, because in some ways we have to deconstruct who we've been living as in order to
Mhm.
navigate the world, to make space for the new version of us that matches that vision we have for ourselves. And I think that that can feel scary for a lot of people. That can feel like, "Well, why would I wanna go on that pathway if it's gonna feel so hard?"
Well, and it's sometimes too, it's that incongruence, right? You're ready mentally, but your nervous system and your body is,
Mhm.
like being dragged away from the scene. I was so ready in my mind and there was no commitment like in my physical
Mhm.
body. But I'll also tell you too, when I started, I didn't come from the realm of coaching and a lot of these modalities. So I, like many of my clients, this is useful for me. I came with really no awareness of the involvement of the body and the importance of the body in the process. So I definitely lived in my head or out of my body entirely my whole life up to that point. So when I entered the coaching training and they started asking me, "Well, where do you feel that in your body?" I was like, "Why?" Like, "What you wanna know about that for?" Because I really didn't get it. And so it was hard for me to wrap my head around. So I really mean from here down, I was ready, committed here, but the body had so much to unpack. And you're right. It was a big, big, big change, shift, journey, and I would do it again.
Mm,
As impactful and difficult as it was, I would do it again in a heartbeat.
yeah. Nothing like a 1,000-pound animal that's fully in its body to invite you into your body.
Right?
Oh my gosh. So you not only did a couple different coach trainings, but then you went through our Master Facilitator program, which for those of you that don't know about our work, the standard Equus coaching course teaches you to work one-on-one with people. And our Master Facilitator program is really about how do you run workshops, group events, because it's a different beast. So part of what we used to do in our master facilitator training was to adopt two wild mustangs that had never been touched by humans, and learn to gentle them, bring them into a relationship with humans. You and I got to go through a pretty transformational experience in the master facilitator program together, where we adopted a horse named Sunna and another horse named Little Black. And we got to take them from never having been touched to moving in the direction of being able to have halters on, pick up their feet, interact with in human ways. What would you share about that experience, at least at those on sites where we were there in the master facilitator training, that were impactful for you?
So much. Often I still think about when Kasha was pointing out a pattern that I was doing with the little black, of where I was anticipating something to happen where I wouldn't know what to do, and the pattern that I was stuck in the moment. I think of that often. I think about the energy work that we did. We learned because as you recall, we used to take we took the round pen panels and we put them in this barbell shape, is how I describe it, and then the horse would come into the center and we would take turns, right? Being that person who was in the front, like energetically holding the space so that the horse would kind of stay in the barbell and we could advance and retreat till we got touch, right? Um, that's the story I tell the most to every day out here. Everybody could probably tell you the story um, because so much happened for me there when Suna was in the barbell shape, when she was in the handle. It was my turn to be the person. And she was so terrified.
Mhm.
And she was looking at me, and I was looking at her, and she was saying to me, like, I am at the edge, right? I am at the edge of what I can handle, and I will run over you if I have to, right? And I was like, I know, I
Mm.
know. I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. Um, and I was trying on the outside, be soothing and calm and like, okay, you don't have to run over me. It'll be great. But something happened in that moment also about connection between Suna and myself. And that was part of the trajectory and part of recognizing, she and I, as I have come to know, you also end up with the horses that are in many ways yourself. Right. And so I'm like, Suna is my CNI or, you know, and how afraid she was and how similar we were. So learning about energetic space, learning about more of my patterns, more of my fears. And there was so much learning about, because Coel said, we weren't there to become Mustang trainers. We were there to learn about ourselves and overcoming fear and things. But being in that situation with Suna, I saw her. And I might get choked up as I recall it. Ugh, I saw her. And what I'll tell you about one of my clients in a little bit because you asked me about maybe an impactful story. And I won't ruin it. I'll leave it in the story. But she said something that I learned in that moment with Suna about who she really was versus what she looked like she was.
Mhm.
And she was just afraid. We were able to halter the little black, right? We could lead her around, we could pick up her feet, we could touch her all over. But with Suna, we could still only very carefully advance and retreat slowly into her through the panels and touch her gently on the shoulder. Because if you even accidentally touched a chin hair, it was like you shot her out of a cannon. She was so reactive and so afraid still. And so the lady at the facility said, oh, I'm going to go ahead and adopt the little black one and we're going to send this one. We were calling her the Roan. And she's actually a rose gray, which is a horse that starts out a rosy gray and then becomes whiter and whiter as they age. We didn't know that then, so we were calling her the Roan, right? And so, the gal said, "Well, we're gonna send the Roan back to the BLM." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, we can't do that." I felt that hard no. And again, one of the things I loved about Coel was teaching us through all of these trainings about the game of life being a hotter, colder game. Right?
Mhm.
What feels hot, what feels like yes, what feels cold, what feels like no, and that was a hard no. That was like, no, my everything in my body says no. We cannot let her go back. She's sensitive, she's loving, she's kind, she's just afraid, what will happen to her, right? It's like we can't do it. But I am completely unqualified. I have just met my first Mustang, and she's a hot one. What are we gonna do here? I'm totally unqualified to take this horse. I shouldn't do it. But then it was, you have to do it. Like, oh, this is. So I called my mom because I'm like, my mom will talk me out of this because this is a terrible idea. So I called my mom and I'm like, boop, 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 boop. They're like, Mom, hey, wild horse, adopt it, bring it home. What do you think? And my mom is usually pretty good at like squashing really stupid ideas. But to my amazement, my mother said, just a second, let me consult the I Ching.
Mm.
The I Ching is an ancient Chinese oracle for those listening that aren't familiar with it. That was unexpected. So she left the phone, shink, 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 threw her little pennies, came back to the phone, and she said, it's your destiny.
Wow.
And that's how it happened.
Wow.
So I went and I filled out the paperwork and I adopted Suna. And I hadn't even closed on the property where I was going to have her yet. That was part of the problem. So in about 6 weeks or so, she traveled over 2,000 miles from Oregon to Missouri and moved in with me. And then that was the second beginning of the hero's journey
Yeah, yeah.
going forward.
Thank you for sharing about Suna's journey with us. That was a very powerful experience for me on the instructor side of that, to be part of leading you all through that experience with her. And you're right, she was just scared. We had this, what seemed like the more leader of the two initially, of these two horses, the one that was leading more confident herself, become the one that was the most scared. the most afraid of taking the next step in relationship with us as humans. And as a reminder, like these are horses that don't have, they're not domesticated horses. They're not horses that have built relationship with humans since their birth. These are horses that are wild and at some point rounded up off of the land in many ways, in very traumatic ways for many of them that scare them. And then now we are in the process of building a relationship with an animal that's just been through something that has changed its life completely and drastically. And
Mhm.
so I think what I love you sharing about in that story is that I think that sometimes people forget is any interaction with a horse, and the wild ones can teach you this even more directly than some maybe the domesticated ones, but it's all shared vulnerability. It's that horse doesn't know if we're going to harm it. Technically, in nature, we are a predator, as a species, as humans, and horses are on the prey spectrum. And so, in some ways, they see us as a threat. And then, for a lot of people that they go in interactions with horses, they feel the vulnerability of being next to an animal that's that size, that's potentially lethal if not respected in many ways. And so I actually love what you're sharing is about in that moment in the barbell between you and Sunna is both of you were afraid, and that's that shared vulnerability that actually allowed you to see her and actually connected you to your destiny.
Mhm.
Now, not only did that was that a part of your destiny and sort of owning her, but how did that shift what you were creating as an Equus coach, as a person that was offering equine facilitated learning? How did that shift your business?
A lot happened, but try to be concise. So she arrived and I thought, "Oh my gosh, what am I gonna do here with this wild horse?" So at first I thought, "Well, I'm gonna need help." Again, part our story. I'm gonna need help. I can't do this myself. So I found a Mustang trainer to come and help me out. And Utah had come to visit shortly after that. So I talked to her about this too. And she was very supportive because the Mustang trainer said to me, you know, and you know me well, Travis. So I think I'm doing much better now, but I'm a person who tends to be wound up a little tight anyway, right? And so uh, he said to me, "Are you always like that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much." But I'm, like, I'm like extra nervous right now, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And he goes, "Well, you're kind of like a rattlesnake." And he goes, "A horse doesn't want to be around a rattlesnake." And Yuta later said, "You're not a rattlesnake." She goes, "You were just nervous. That's not the same thing as being dangerous."
Mm.
So, but there I was, right? And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm a rattlesnake." And so he said, "That horse won't come to you, won't do anything." So he said, "Get her out of the stall," and wanted to see it go to pieces, right? But she came out of that stall and she came right to me and she was like, "You and I are both nervous and in the same boat." She said, "I don't know what's wrong with him, but let's be And he was like, "What?" And it's what we always learned, through the Equus coach training and things of like, it's not about what emotion you're having. It's if you're congruent and authentically, you know, being in that feeling. And I was, and Suna was the same. And she's like, "Look, I know you. I get you. You're my person." So we discarded all of that and I had to work through can I trust myself? Can I make these decisions? Can I do this? So did that, right? And what I learned was that I could gentle a wild Mustang.
Hmm.
And so once you know something, you can't unknow it. And once you know that you can help a situation, you can never complain about that situation again unless you're doing everything you can to change it. So I knew in that moment I was going to need to do something. So I reached out to a friend that had become a friend on Facebook because he ended up with a horse from Suna's same herd, a Mustang from
Mm.
her same herd. And so I had started following him on Facebook and I reached out to him and said, "I can help at least in some capacity. What do you think I should do? How could I help?" And he said, uh, "Well, seems pretty clear to me." He's like, "You've already got this Equus coach thing that you're doing. So you're already doing coaching with horses. Just do it with Mustangs." And that sounded also daunting and terrifying at the point. I'm like, but I thought, "Ooh." Yeah. Okay. I
That's the
wasn't
next
sure at
logical
all at the
step.
moment. Yeah, how that was gonna come together, what the nuances of that would be, but, that's what started it, was George's suggestion that that could be what I did. So I actually started fostering for a rescue. So they were sending that was one of their, satellite locations. They were sending me Mustangs that were coming out of kill pen situations,
Mhm.
and, started fostering for them, and then I'm like, "Oh, but we should also help." So I started adopting unhandled, and we started training them, and then gradually we started, um our horses that we already had were finding other places to be or crossing over the Rainbow Bridge or different things like that until we only have Mustangs now, and we only have 2 horses. We have 15 horses now. 13 of them are Mustang
15,
15,
wow.
13 are Mustangs, all born in the wild. So,
Wow, you've
mm,
really
our
grown.
I know, right? We have 18 acres and we can have 1 horse per acre, so, there's still room, right?
Uh-huh.
But, we, the 2 horses that are not Mustangs, one is a mini because Minnie, right? She doesn't belong to us, but someone has her stay here with us because she's amazeballs. And the other horse is, my quarter horse that I had before all of this began. And you don't get rid of your best friend just because you
No,
now have a mission, right? So she's here
no, yeah, yeah.
representing the statistics.
That's amazing. And how's Suna doing these days?
Sunna is incredible, and
Mm.
nobody believes it when I tell them she was that scared and that, whatever, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I was just in there sitting down with her." I wouldn't have sat down with her if on the ground in the round pen if I'd have known, and I'm like, "No, you read the room. You saw now she is loving and she's amazing. She's majestic." And when we met her, that was not what we saw. We didn't see, "Oh, this beautiful flashy horse." But as she and I grew in our confidence as we were attached at the hip, she just grew into her beauty and her majesty, and she just has an air about her. And yet she's loving when we do meditation circles or we do sessions with individuals. She just, I'm here for you. And she's magic. She's one of the best horses we have at the work.
I just love that to hear the transformational story. Once you saw her, you could see her and give her her own respected pace and build a relationship with her in the way that she could do. And now what that's carried into. I it's funny how different our first impressions of horses can be, and how they evolve over time. I still get to interact with Little Black, the other one, every once in a while. Like once a year, I get to go down to the ranch in Oregon and see her. And while she initially came across as the more passive one, she's like the lead mare of her herd, and she is bossing people around, and she's really grown into herself. She's
Mhm.
really amazing to offer Equus coaching with. And so it's nice to recognize the stories we put on horses. Spoiler alert, the stories we put on other humans as well, and how we can evolve those stories if we actually stay curious and stay engaged in the relationship. We can evolve those stories and allow the other to kind of bloom into who they're meant to be and who they really are.
That so resonates. And I'll tell you, when I went up to pick Suna up, there was an amazing, amazing Mustang trainer that had come over. And so he had met Little Black and he had met Suna. And this man, as opposed to the other man who made me feel very uncomfortable, this man, the horse, how horses, they sense the yumminess of someone's energy. I did. This man made me feel like I'm a rock star. I knew nothing, right? I was like, I'm amazing at this. He just made me feel great. But he said to me after meeting Suna, he said some things that made my life. He said, first of all, he said, she's a very special horse. She's a very special animal, very sensitive. And I was very concerned about who might get her. And he said, you guys are a good match.
Mm.
I know. So I was like, oh. And then he said, people can get in trouble with any kind of horse if they make assumptions. You can get hurt if you make assumptions. And he said people could get hurt um, with Suna because she's afraid. So if they pushed her too hard, she might lash out if she was afraid. He said people could get hurt with the Little Black because she has no respect. And he goes, and I've come to find that the horses that have the hardest time giving it up, like Suna, are the ones who have the most to give.
Yeah. I think I felt that from her from the get-go. I was very attracted to her and very curious about building a relationship with her, and It was work, but but man, was I could see that's where she could end up if handled well, if given the space to. Beautiful horse. So Suna really shifted your trajectory. So now you're not just focused on helping humans heal and helping them work through the stuff that's going on in their lives, but you through Zen Horse, you are now making space for horses to do that, Mustangs to do that as well. Is that so? You have a
Right.
dual mission that's going on in your work now.
Yes. Yeah, so just expanding on the belief that, healing happens in relationship, right?
Mhm.
So same theme, just a little bit where we're able to add on another layer of, "Oh, and we're helping these horses, and we're helping them still, like, get adopted too." So we've got a certain number that we hope to keep pulling out of the, holding areas and helping them keep getting adopted, so helping that process. But right, that healing happens in a relationship, and I have a quote on my website because I love it so much by Leela Watson that said, "If you are here to help me, then you're wasting your time. But if you're here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together."
Mm,
So the horses aren't just here for the humans, and the humans aren't just here for the horses, right? We're all helping each other raise that vibration and heal and yeah.
so beautiful. If people want to find out more about Zen Horse and the work that you're doing at your on your property, how do they find out about it?
You can visit us at zenhorse.org. So all one word, Zenhorse, zenhorse.org. We're on Facebook too. We have a Facebook page for Zen Horse where you can watch what we're up to.
And you're in St. Louis, right? St. Louis, Missouri?
In St. Charles, which is St.
St.
Louis
Charles.
adjacent.
Got it. Okay.
And
What are the
we're
services that people could, if they were in your area and they wanted to come and experience this, what are the services you're offering now?
Good question. We have a wide range. So about 70% of what we do is still just in that straight Equus coaching space.
Okay.
So we do individual, couples, we do corporate, we do nonprofit leadership. We have workshops. We have our Running Wild series. So in those workshop series, we do work on things like boundaries and understanding energy and space and invitation versus proximity, things like that. We have a women's retreat. That's one of our very popular items every year. It's our Wild
Uh,
Woman Weekend. It'll be the sixth year of that. So we have lots of fun things, meditation circles, but we also have trauma therapy for people that want to come and really unpack some deeper things.
got it. Oh man. It's like a one-stop shop at at your
I'm
place.
telling
Love
you.
that.
And we got a labyrinth on the property.
Well, thank you so much, Kit, for joining me and for sharing your story and for sharing about Suna. I think that people are going to really love getting to know her through our shared stories. Thanks so much again for joining me, Kit. If you've been listening to all of this and want to learn more about what we offer as Equus coaches, please go to equuscoach.com. You can learn more about the programs that we offer, both as to become an Equus coach, but also public facing ones that are about experiencing the work. So that's at equuscoach.com. On there, you can also look for a directory of Equus coaches in your area that might be able to offer you a session. But if you're in the St. Louis area, make sure you check out Zen Horse and Kit because they're doing fabulous work there with the Mustangs and for the humans that come to the property.